Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hello Again. I'm obviously Isabelle Broom. If you didn't know that already, then what are you doing here? I'm joined this week by Annabelle, author of amazing rom-coms, hilarious books with lovely characters. And she is joining me from France. Whereabouts in France are you?
So I'm just by the Pyrenees, just south of Toulouse.
Wow. And it's warm.
Yeah, it's really, really hot at the moment, like really sticky August heat. But shouldn't complain, but it's nice.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about you and your books?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm Annabelle and I write sort of romantic comedies, as Izzy just said. My latest book is We Just Clicked, which is a good example of the type of book I write, which is sort of a feel-good story, which will hopefully make you laugh. And they usually have some kind of a big hook to my books. So this one's about sort of an Instagrammer who wants to become famous, and another Instagrammer says that they should sort of fake date to boost their profile on Instagram. And it's sort of what's more important, your real life or your fake life, fame or fortune or true love. So it's sort of what happens when she meets the man of her dreams offline and then has to decide between the two worlds.
That's amazing. And so on, such a great modern topic, because it must happen all the time as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm always really intrigued by Instagrammers because I'm sort of such a fan of Instagram stories and I always watch everybody else's. And I follow quite a lot of sort of, couples and families. And I just think, well, what would happen, if you were having an argument that day? Would you put it in? Or, because it must happen. And so then that's what sort of got me thinking about the book.
Yeah, there's a big difference, isn't there, between the sort of real vloggers and bloggers and the ones that are very super polished. I mean, do you find yourself looking at Instagram and just thinking, yeah, right, some of the stuff that people are claiming?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some people that just have these like sort of perfect lives, don't they? But I mean, it must be so easy to do because I do it myself. Like if I'm out and I'm driving, the moment there's all the stuff. Well, the sunflower fields have just started to die. But before that, I was like, oh, I'm going to pull over and I'm take pictures of myself. And it's like, well, actually, I'm in a rush to go here. But it's just that whole idea of I can make it look like I'm just strolling casually through the countryside of sunflowers because it's so pretty. But it's not really what I was up to. I was on my way to the vets or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, the more you look at opportunities to, present an amazing life, the more you can find them.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's, I don't know about you, but when you're trying to build your brand as an author, Instagram is a thing that you have to kind of factor in. And I've recently started a separate account for my books and travel, aside from my real life, because I think my real life one is just random myriad of things. And there's no, to be a big hit on Instagram, you have to have a feed that looks a certain way. And I'm like, trying to do that, but then also want to have one that's just for fun as well. And, with roosters and me working out on my kitchen floor and sweating and all the really like awful stuff. And then
like the normal everyday. That's the thing, is there's like two worlds of Instagram. There's the kind of normal everyday people that and, just having a normal day. Sorry, my doggy's being really noisy.
Oh, no, fine.
You have this kind of like normal stuff, but then you also have like the very polished one, because I've even heard that you have to have use the same filter and the same color scheme and things. And I'm just like, I can't do it.
No, and also like there are lots of filters. I don't want to be boring.
No, exactly.
Like, the most I can kind of get that down is to be like, right, okay, all the pictures on my author things are either going to be book related or travel related, and that's it, and that's fine. But I think, like you say, Instagram is a great mix, isn't it? Of essentially, you want to look at a beautiful picture. But when I'm watching videos, I want to see the nuts and bolts, and I want to be laughing, ideally, or seeing like stuff that I don't usually get to see in my everyday life, or feel like I'm having a chat with my friends. I think those are the top, because I don't really follow celebrities. I don't watch celebrity Instagram stories. I can't be bothered. I'm like, oh no. You're having a great life, good for you, I'm not interested.
No, that's it. And I just follow like normal people, but I think that's why I love Instagram, because I love stories. And people that don't use Instagram stories or don't watch Instagram stories, I don't think they can understand this whole, you just get this sort of snapshot into people's lives, and I think they're a bit more natural, aren't they, the stories, rather than
it's like,
well, I hope so.
Like reality TV through your phone, your own personal channels.
Yeah And I love it. Like I put it on sometimes when I'm like cooking the dinner and I'm there, chopping vegetables and seeing what people are up to.
Yeah. I think my general life stuff, or like me building a mosaic, or me just taking the dogs for a walk, gets so much more likes and attention than any book stuff I've ever put up there. Like a nice flat lay with my book, everyone's like, yeah, great, whatever, but they're all like a million, 250 comments about the fact that I had a rooster on my lap. It's yeah, I suppose it is the message is to do what you want, but I love that idea, and it's so it's a great idea. Well done you for having it.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, hopefully everyone else will think it's a good idea too.
Your central character, and we just clicked, is actually called Izzy Brown, which is very similar to my name.
I know, it got changed actually. I can't remember who changed it. I think my editor changed it because I can't remember what she was. I think she was called Lydia or someone. But they were like, no, you've got to have something fun. So there you go. Your name is a
fun name. Yeah. Just all the more reason to read it if you weren't going to already, which I'm sure you were, viewer. So romantic fiction as a genre, what is it that you love about romantic fiction first, and which element of a love story do you enjoy writing the most?
So I love romantic fiction and writing romantic fiction in the same way that's what I love to read. I mean, I do read a lot of sort of action thrillers and things, but my main love is a romance novel of all types. So I love rom-coms, and I love more traditional romance, and sometimes I like something a bit steamier. But I just love this whole I love a happy ending, and I just love seeing how characters get together. And I've always been my stepdad always used to tell me off when I was younger because I had Disney values, because I always sort of thought that like the world should be like nice and rosy, and everyone should be happy and live happily ever after. And I think that the world can be a really horrible place, so to have a book like that to escape to is perfect for me. And so that's when I started writing. It was just exactly what I wanted to write, because it was what I wanted to read. And so I love it. It's just you go to work and you get to write this really lovely, no matter what's going on in your life, you get to write this really lovely scene, or those moments. I think my favorite moment of a romance story is that moment where the characters kiss for the first time, or you have that build up and that sort of tension that's been building, and then you have that moment of the release, and I love it. And almost more than I probably like the ending, because I just love that sort of thing. And also, like, if you can create a scene where you almost get them to kiss or something, and then it just, then something interrupts them, or it doesn't quite happen, and then you keep that momentum going. It's like you're teasing, and I love it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's so true. And actually, generally in love stories, at the point where they first kiss, everything's been nice up to that point, and after that it's conflict, and you try and you basically break them up, don't you, or tear them apart, and then at the end you either bring them back together or you don't. But by the time they get to the end, they're a bit weary, and they're like, oh god, I don't know if I've got the energy to kiss you.
And it's kind of like the relief, like, oh, finally, at the end. Whereas at least at the first part in the middle, it's that sort of just that cute thing.
Yeah, and it is goosebumps moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when you've done it right as well, that if you can read it and you get that, like sort of almost that you get butterflies yourself as you read it, and you sort of tingle. I think then that's when doesn't it? That's good.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much snobbery around romantic fiction as a genre, and often like chick lit, I hate to say it, like chick lit, people be like, oh, you write chick lit, and I get that a lot. Like when I'm on dating apps, people are like, what kind of books do you write? And they're like, oh, you're one of those types of writers. I hate that stuff. Because I just think it's ridiculous, because we spend probably 80% of our lives chatting about relationships, about family, about who we love, who we don't love, who's broken our heart, who our first love was at school, what our first kiss was. It's those sort of unifying topics, and I don't understand the snobbery at all.
No, I don't. And I don't think, like, as I said, I read like action thrillers and stuff. And I used to work in a my background before I was a writer was I was a museum curator, and I used to work in like a military environment. And some of these books that I read that are sort of action thriller with like military heroes, I'm like, well, that's just wrong, and these wouldn't happen. And I'm like, they don't get that criticism or anything attracted to them. So why do we, as sort of romance authors, when this is, this is, as you say, it's our everyday life.
And if you look back through history, if you look at all the sort of big characters, that you remember from fiction, it's always a love story. It's Romeo and Juliet, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no,
It's Darcy and Elizabeth. It's always those big romantic characters. Well, Harry Potter, but Harry Potter did have a love story, had lots of
yeah,
love stories in it. But yeah, it is, and that human connection. I
yeah,
think because I'm like you, I read a lot of thrillers as well, and I love like a pacey, fast-paced thriller, and you know, and the writing's great and everything. But a week after I put it down, I couldn't tell you anything about anyone in it. Couldn't tell you
yeah.
what the characters' names are half the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I actually sometimes, like, well, especially when I had my kids were young, and I used to read a lot when I was feeding them, and I would read these sort of action thrillers because they didn't have to concentrate, you know, too much. And then actually I went to read one recently, and I realised I'd read it, but I didn't realise until halfway through. And I've never had that with like a romance novel, because you instantly have this connection to the story in a way, because I don't know, I can always remember. I couldn't. It's like when my husband says, when we watch a film, and he's like, oh, I realised I've watched this. And I'm like, how does that happen? How does that happen? But I've never had it happen with a romance book like that.
No, and I think it's characters that you revisit books for. You know, you can have a really amazing plot where you literally gasp and drop the book because you're like, oh my god, I did not see that coming. And those are amazing goosebump books, but you don't really revisit them unless you want to forensically pull them apart and try and make something better yourself as a writer.
Yeah.
But it's
No,
not. It's the characters you revisit romance for. You actually
yeah.
miss them, don't you?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
reread Gilly Cooper's books like every couple of years, the whole Rutshire series, because I just miss hanging out with those, you know, ridiculous characters.
Yeah, I think that's one of the lovely things about sort of a romance novel, is that it isn't just, you know, a love story, is it? It's not just about what happens. It's much more about, you know, the character and their development. So I guess you'd probably, yeah, I can see why it probably stays with you longer, because you've had that journey with them rather than sort of like a sequence of events that you
Yeah,
might.
that big emotional connection, or
Yeah,
maybe you found it more relatable to your own life, or maybe it's made you realize something about your own relationship that you didn't before reading. And I mean,
yeah.
I get a lot of messages like that, people that have really connected with the sort of journey that my characters have been on, and it's made them change their lives in certain ways. And I don't think there's any bigger compliment than that,
Yeah. Yeah, I
really.
mean, I often get it with, like, it started with The Tweet was a book I wrote about a digital detox,
Mm.
and it made people really question, you know, once they'd read it, it made them question their sort of usage of the internet. And some of them went on digital detoxes afterwards, and I went on one after I wrote it. So I
Yeah.
sort of went off my phone for a week. And it was really interesting reading those responses. And then when I wrote the bucket list to mend a broken heart, I would often get people who would say to me, oh, you've really inspire me to write a bucket list. And I had my favourite one was my mum's friend, who was sort of in her late 60s, emailed me and said, oh, I read the bucket list and I really loved it. I made my own bucket list, and she had gone something like motorbiking, like, you know, sort of off-road motorbiking. Something really, really random. But she said, I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't have read the bucket list, and it just sort of inspired me to do it. And I thought, well, how wonderful was that?
That is amazing. That is amazing. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those connections. Because,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I like to make people, I think with my books, I think sometimes when I read reviews, there's always like, oh, there's a bit of a moral to this tale. But I kind of like that idea that, you know, you can make people, even though it's not their story, like with We Just Clicked, you know, it's about sort of Instagram, and it's about, you know, what's more important in your life, to look good or to have a real life outside of it. And I think it's just, it makes people, you know, question themselves. And I think that's good because it gives them a connection to the story.
Definitely. We could talk about this topic of digital detoxing and real versus Instagram lives all day long, but let's not. We'll move on for now to the next question. And I wanted to ask you, because all your books are really, really funny. You know, they are laugh out loud, all the brilliant one-liners and stuff. Do you basically spend all your day at your desk just cracking yourself up, or is it more hair tearing?
Yeah, it's definitely not funny when I was at my desk. But I think it's a bit like me. It reminds me of a story of when I was at lunch not so long ago with a Dutch friend here in France. And we don't know each other very well. And we're sort of in that sort of early stages. We've been friends for about a year. We don't know each other very well. But I gave her a Dutch copy of my first book, Don't Tell the Groom, and she read it over lockdown. And when she sort of, when I saw her recently, she said to me, oh, it was really funny. And she seemed really surprised because she didn't know that I could write. She was really surprised that I would write something funny. And it's because I think that in life, I'm not funny at all, and I'm very shy. And so, you have to get to know me a lot to get to the stage where I will laugh and I will kind of joke with people, because I don't feel comfortable. And I think that's a bit like that with my first draft. So when I wrote my first draft, it won't be funny pretty much at all. And I don't really know the characters. And then I find that then as I go through, the next time I edit it, I'll edit in the jokes because I know the characters and I'm more comfortable with it. And then I can see where the humour needs to come in the story. And, as it goes along, it gets funnier and funnier. And then it's a bit like, when I sent it to my editor and she's like, oh, this is really hilarious. I'm like, oh, okay, well, she likes that, then perhaps I should do this and, ham it up a little bit and all this kind of stuff. And it just builds, I think, a bit like I do with people. I don't know.
That's really interesting. I love that we're getting like a secret version of you that not everyone gets through your books. Yeah. That's very cool. And actually, it's humor is really difficult to write. I'd say it's harder to make someone laugh than to make them cry.
Yeah, I mean, it is really, I find it, I think it's because when you, like, humor is so subjective, isn't it? So like with, when I write a sad scene, because We Just Clicked's got quite a sad storyline about grief in it. And I guess that most people can connect to, somebody that they may have lost, and it's a bit easier to channel in a way. But with humor, you're writing a joke and it might be sort of like a joke when they're having sex or something. Can you think, oh, is that a bit, I find that funny, but is that actually funny? Or, I write things and then I think my editor's just going to be like, what's she on? This isn't funny at all. And it's really, I think it's really hard.
I tried to make my character in my third book, Hannah, she's called actually after our agent that we share. And I tried to make her a bit sort of, because my second novel was much darker and much sort of sadder at the end. And I wanted to do something a bit bouncier. And I tried to make her really funny. And I just get all these reviews being like, oh, Hannah's so immature. And I'm like, oh no, that's basically me.
I know, and that's the worst bit.
And everyone always goes, oh, she's so immature. She really annoyed me. And I'm like, we better never meet each other because you wouldn't like me at all. That's basically how I live my life.
I always think those reviews are the best reviews because they're always the ones that are based on a person that I find that people are going, no, that just wouldn't happen. You're like, no, but it has happened.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me.
Happened. Yeah. I know, like coincidences, it would never happen. I'm like, but they did though. That's why I got the idea for the book in the first place.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Oh, it makes stuff, and the things that you think are really ridiculous, no one has an issue with.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That is true. Or things that you think, oh, this is about as subtle as, being punched in the face, and no one notices it. And you wait for people to be like, oh, I saw the clue a mile off, and they just don't see it. Like, but it's right there. How did you miss that? It's like a big mammoth in the middle of the page. Yeah. No. This is why writing is an alchemy, isn't it? It's completely weird and brilliant and all the things.
Keeps us on our toes anyway.
It does, definitely. I wanted to ask you about your upcoming novel that comes out. Is it early next year?
February, I think. February. Yeah.
There's no cover yet, but it's called The Man I Didn't Marry. And I'm not going to say that what the synopsis is. I'm going to let you tell us that because it's such a really, really good idea. I'm so jealous. So please tell us and then tell us where the idea came from.
Okay, so The Man Who Didn't Marry is a story about a woman called Ellie who is happily married. She's got a baby that's sort of small and a baby that's due, and she's sort of 7 months pregnant. And one day her husband basically turns up having lost his memory. So they knew each other because she was sort of a childhood best friend of his sister. So they do know each other as characters, but he sees her as this sort of geeky 15-year-old girl. And obviously she's his wife. Yeah. And so the book premise is that he's got this type of a temporary amnesia, which the doctors have said, because it's a type of amnesia which can last a few hours or it can last a few weeks, and in rare cases it can last years. But obviously with her being very pregnant, she wants to jog his memory along. So she tries to get him to fall back in love with her basically, and to try and jog his memory along. And it's sort of their story of what happens when you're sort of essentially married to, the man I didn't marry, married to a stranger.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Yeah, it was kind of an idea that sort of came out of, I've been reading a lot about brain injuries. And so it came out of quite a sort of not a dark book, but just more of a serious idea I had for a book. And the more I thought about it, the more I sort of got really fascinated with, you know, memory and what would happen if some kind of life-changing thing happened to you and you suddenly had, you know, a spouse that wasn't the person that you knew. And when I started sort of doing the early sort of, you know, ideas for it, I realized that the brain injury idea was not a good one, because it changes so much of people's personalities, and there's obviously physical injuries that go with it, and it was too dark a topic and too big a topic really to have in a rom-com, because you wouldn't want to make light of it. And then I found this most perfect amnesia called dissociative amnesia, which is this sort of very temporary structure, and it's caused by if you have a trauma. So it just lent itself to the plot, because, you know, part of the plot is her trying to, you know, fall in love with somebody else, to get into falling in love with her again, but also part of the plot is trying to work out what this trauma was that's caused him to have this amnesia, you know, what's the event that he's blocked out. And then it just snowballed from there, because it was such a fun idea, because, you know, what would you, if you had a partner who didn't know what your life was like, you know, how would you tell them about your life? You know, what would you change? You know, all their annoying habits that they have. Yeah, exactly. And it's just it was quite fun writing it, I have to say, and imagining what that would be like.
It's really exciting, really exciting.
Yes.
It's such a, because it can be difficult, can't it, to come up with fresh concepts for romantic fiction.
Yeah, and because I really like that trope of, you know, like the memory loss. It's quite a, you know, a well used one, and I was a bit I was like, oh, this is a really good idea, because, you know, I've written it from the perspective of, you know, the person it doesn't happen to, and I thought, oh, that's nice and fresh. And then, of course, then when I started writing it, I was like, well, there's a reason why it happens to the protagonist, because then you follow the protagonist's journey. And then, so when you're writing from the person it doesn't happen to, it's a very passive story. Way, because you're looking at somebody else. And so it meant that when I first started writing it, she wasn't pregnant, and you know, there just wasn't a drive to the story as to why she would be so desperate to get his memory back. You know, why didn't she just wait? And so I then rewrote it and sort of added in the pregnancy, so there was a bit more urgency to it, and it just worked as a concept then, because suddenly you understood as a reader why she had this sort of 8-week period where she needed him to be, you know, the husband, because otherwise she knew that she wasn't going to be able to handle like 2 under 2 without him by her side. So
I love it. This is what happens though, if you're thinking of writing a book. You don't just write one book, you write maybe half of one, and then you think it's wrong, and you go back to the beginning, and then you write another one, and then you have a structural edit, and your editor tells you it's wrong, and then you write another one.
Because
many times, many books.
Because I think with this one, I think I had this weird, I don't know if Word does this normally, but I think it said something like I'd written 165,000 words for this book, but obviously it's 100,000 words, so I've cut 65,000 out of the original document.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Think about all those words. My mum was saying this to me the other day. She was like, imagine if you got all the words together that you'd written since you know, wrote your first novel, and all the writing that you've done in that sort of 5-year window, all the short stories, all the features, all the, you know, all the writing you've done, how many words that would be. And I was like, God, that would be a lot. Like if you counted all the pre-edits and all the rewrites, and, you know.
I know, it's crazy. And then you've got, because I've got books that I've written that I never did anything with. So, you know, different genre books I've got, and you know, books where you've written, like, because I tend to, the way I work is that when I have a book idea, I tend to write sort of 10 or 20,000 words to see whether it works as an idea before I sort of pitch it sometimes. And so I have all these, like, you know, beginnings of books, and then sometimes I just think about these poor characters, because you know, like, we've got they've got these half stories everywhere.
It's never a waste though, is it? It's all good.
No, I guess not. It always gets you to the,
sometimes, you know, characters can come back. Characters that, you know, sometimes I have a character in a short story that I'll write for a magazine, say, and then I'll bring that character back into a book because I like them so much.
Yeah, I guess that's really true. I wrote a short story once, and I've been thinking, oh, perhaps it would work as a bigger book because the characters are so lovely.
Yes, this is good to see. Right, we've reached the quick fire round. Okay. Here's my trusty coconut shell, which was a bird feeder, and is now has these random questions in, which I'll mix up because. Right, we'll do 3 quick fires just to finish off. Okay.
All right then.
Okay, number 1. This would be better, obviously, if you could choose them, but.
Oh, I'll trust you.
Life. Oh, okay, this is a good one. First thing that you buy if you won the jackpot on the lottery.
Oh, I don't know. What would I buy?
Talk all day about this, didn't you?
I don't think I'd buy anything. I'd go on a holiday. I'm
Ooh.
much more of a holiday than things person.
Where would you go? What's dream destination number one?
Costa Rica.
Oh, good
I've been
one.
before, but I just loved it. That's where, if I got like a dream, I could move and buy a house there and everything. I'd love it.
You could have a pet sloth that just lived in Italy outside.
I did find a jaguar farm for sale when I was, well, not a jaguar farm, but a farm that jaguars went through when I was in lockdown. And I was trying to convince my husband that we should buy it.
Bit different to having a chicken and a dog.
No, yeah.
Jaguars wander by. I want giraffes. You know, that hotel where you can go and stay with giraffes. I would definitely go there if I won the lottery.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I don't even know where it is. I've forgotten. Somewhere.
Oh, I don't know, but it'd be amazing. Can you imagine that when you eat your breakfast and you having your coffee?
Yeah. I'm obsessed with giraffes. I think they're amazing. Right, question 2. Oh, the best and worst thing about being an author.
Oh, I'd say the best thing is when, like what we've discussed, is when, you know, you get an email or a message from somebody that's read your book and you've made a connection or you've inspired them to do something. That's hands down the nicest thing. So if you've loved a book, please tell the author, because it means so much to them.
Second that.
And I think the worst thing, I don't know, there's so many worse things, which makes it really hard to choose. But probably just the kind of the self-doubt that you can get, and the fact that you second guess yourself so much, and you're sort of, although, you know, we have an agent and a publisher and stuff, and you have a direction, it's so much that first draft or that first idea is down to you. And sometimes that can be quite a lot of, you know, that fear. I've got the fear at the moment of what's going to be my next idea, and it's
I hear you. And actually that can really affect your creative process, that self-doubt, that sort of little voice telling you that, you know, your last book's no good or whatever it might be. And it's really hard to overcome, really hard, because it doesn't matter how many times you're told that you're amazing. And I know that it's not related to sales, because I know that authors right at the top of, you know, authors that have been on the bestseller lists have the same problem. So I think it's just a creative brain.
Yeah, I think it's probably hard for them too, isn't it? Because if you've written this like massive, I often think that if you've written this massive book and it's become this massive bestseller, and then you've got to come up with the next book, I mean, surely you'd have more self-doubt, because you'd be like, can I do it again?
Yeah, the pressure would be insane.
Yeah.
That's why it's much better to have a big breakthrough novel a bit later in your career, like we're going to have.
Yes, absolutely.
When we've got lots of books already that we can fall back on.
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm done now, that's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to write it. Yeah. Right, okay, final question. Do this little one here. Oh, your greatest achievement.
Oh,
very positive.
Yeah. I don't know, because it's so hard, isn't it? Because I should probably say like my kids and things, but that's a bit
outside of family.
Outside of family. Okay. I think, well, there's, you know, like living in France for 7 years has been quite an achievement, because there's, you know, it's quite a hard thing to do. But I think just generally just having a book published is a big thing, and I've been really lucky, and obviously worked very hard, but also been lucky as well with, you know, what's happened. But yeah, I would say I think it's really hard. That's a really horrible question.
Yeah, well, there you go. You see, you're self-deprecating again. You're saying,
yeah,
I haven't done anything good, when you've actually done loads and loads and loads of really amazing things.
Yeah, but then that's the hard thing, isn't it? I think sometimes just to pick one, because it's a bit like, you know, which is your favourite book? It's like, you know, picking your favourite child and stuff. It's hard.
It is an impossible question, but I always do stray to the same one eventually. When people push me, I always go to the same one. I'm not going to say which one. Oh. If you can guess in the comments below which you think is my favourite of my books. Go on, have a guess. Obviously, it's the one I'm writing now. No, it's not. The one I'm writing now is my least favourite, but that will all change.
It'll change. Once you've written the draft, the first draft is always the worst, isn't it? There's always that horrible thing where you hate what you're writing, and then as soon as it's done, you're like, oh, that's actually okay.
Yeah, really like this chapter about a bat. Yeah. There's always one chapter that I really like, that I'm really fierce about keeping in. I get one every time. Like, you can't edit that out. That stays. It's my favourite one. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could talk to you all day.
I know. Thanks so much for having me.
I try and keep them to like having a cup of tea and a sit down type length, so people can go and feel inspired and then get on with their day or their writing. Aspiring writers out there, hopefully lots of them watching.
Yeah,
Aspiring
well,
chicken
is.
keepers, jaguar farm owners.
Yes.
We're covering all bases here today.
Absolutely, something for everybody.
Okay, so hold up your book again.
So here we go. So we just clicked and it's out in paperback on the 20th.
Buy it. I'm going to point both ways because sometimes on my video I'm that side, but sometimes when it records it goes the other side. So whichever way, buy the book and get pre-ordering on the new one as well, which sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be really good.
Follow you. Are you Anna? Remind me of your Twitter handle and your Instagram.
Oh gosh, it's Annabelle_writes.
Amazing. Go follow. And thank you for stopping by. And we'll see you next week. Bye bye. Just trying to find the button. Bye bye.